Welcome to Faith and Freedom. For the next few minutes, we hope to inform, inspire, and encourage you as we discuss the legal victories and challenges to your fundamental freedoms and religious liberties. Faith and Freedom comes to you from Liberty Counsel, a civil liberties education and legal defense organization. Join us now as Matt Staver, the President and General Counsel of Liberty Counsel, explains the latest legal issues all across this country in the courtrooms of America. Liberty Counsel is winning the battle for your constitutional freedoms.
Americans from all sides of the political spectrum joined together to mourn a horrible tragedy in Arizona. The hard left wing politicizes the tragedy. I'm Matt Barber, Director of Cultural Affairs with Liberty Counsel and Associate Dean with Liberty University School of Law. In for Matt Staver today, and joining me in studio is Shawn Akers, Dean of Liberty's Helms School of Government and Policy Analyst with Liberty Counsel. Well, Shawn, it's been in all the 24-hour news circuits. It's been talked about around the water cooler, across the country, in homes, in churches, this horrible mass murder that occurred where a deranged madman came in and took the lives of 6 innocent people and attempted to assassinate a congresswoman from Arizona, Congresswoman Giffords. America has joined together. Many people, Democrats, Republicans, conservatives, liberals alike, have joined together to mourn this horrible tragedy. By all indications, this man, Jared Loughner, I've heard several top clinical psychologists say that the picture is starting to emerge, that he's clearly mentally disturbed, may very well be a paranoid schizophrenic. I've heard a number say. Unfortunately, as so often happens with these kinds of things, there are people, and there is an element, particularly within the political realm, that seek to take a tragedy like this and shamelessly, really shamelessly, exploit it for their own political gain, politicize such a tragedy. And unfortunately, with this case, while most of us are joining together in prayer in a bipartisan way, there are those, particularly on the far left, who have politicized this horrible event.
You know, Matt, in some sense it defies logic, but in another it makes a lot of sense. It was Rahm Emanuel, loosely quoting Saul Alinsky, that said, don't let any crisis go to waste. And unfortunately, you do have vultures out there. They're going to take every opportunity. Now, how they can do that, and look at the picture of that little 9-year-old girl, is difficult for me to fathom, but that's exactly what's gone on. Now, the interesting part about that, Matt, is that the young man who committed this heinous act was aligned with the far left, not the right. So apparently the logic on the far left these days would be that violence committed by right-leaning people is the problem, is the fault of the conservatives. Violence committed by those with no political ideology is the fault of the conservatives. And even violence by their own far left constituency would be the fault of the conservatives. So the mantra is kind of like it's been with blame Bush, it's blame the conservatives. It really has a lot to do, Matt, more with Saul Alinsky's fifth rule than it does with anything politically relevant.
Well, that's exactly right. It's blame conservatives, it's blame the Tea Party, blame Sarah Palin, blame Rush Limbaugh. All of this, of course, completely absurd. Every person I know, every Tea Partier I know, every conservative I know decries violence of this sort, and none of them I know have called for any violence to occur. So that we know that is just a blatant lie of the left. But as you point out, ironically, this madman's classmates and friends from the past describe him as, quote, a left-wing pothead. Among his list of reading, he had his favorite books, The Communist Manifesto, Mein Kampf, and many, many more. In 1984, A Brave New World, and others. So this was clearly an individual who apparently claims to be an atheist, anti-religion, anti-Christian, who was just deranged. Now because he has apparently left-leaning political positions on varying issues, does that mean that liberals are responsible for what he did? Does that mean that the far left is responsible? Of course not. And anybody who would say that is disingenuous and slimy, frankly. The left isn't responsible for what this madman did. The right isn't responsible for what this madman did. Republicans aren't responsible. Democrats aren't responsible. Jared Lee Loughner is responsible, and Jared Lee Loughner alone.
You know, Matt, this is one of those classic things. When you go through and you read, it only takes a little while before people begin commenting and painting a much deeper picture than first available. And in this case, there were classmates of Loughner's that said, that literally made contemporaneous notes. You know, from you're a lawyer, you know, as I do from practicing law, that contemporaneous notes have a very high value because you wrote them down at the time when you did your investigations. When somebody wrote something down at the time, it's more trustworthy than having written it down after the fact, trying to prepare for litigation or whatnot. There was a particular student, classmate of Loughner's, that took contemporaneous notes, writing them down in her journal as she went back to school to take a math class, and she made the notes in there that this guy is likely, you know, everybody's kind of afraid. We sit by the door and hold our personals close because we'd like to be able to get out quickly. We're afraid he may bring a gun to school. So this is obviously a deranged guy that fell through the loopholes of society, not the fault of one ideology or the other. He's a mentally deranged individual.
Well, and the sad thing is with it all, though, that it's not just the extreme left-wing bloggers, the Daily Kos, for instance, which actually had a post on their site saying that this very congresswoman at one point, after she did something they didn't like, that she was dead to them. The Democrats having a map with bullseyes targeting across the country congressional districts they were seeking to win. Sarah Palin, of course, widely criticized for her map with a similar target on varying districts across the country. Of course, a metaphor, the kind of language, combative language that has been used in politics since our nation's inception. You think that this is vitriol? Look back in the 1800s and look at some of the campaigns that occurred. You mentioned, so unfortunately, it's the mainstream media here that has really discredited itself by jumping in and trying to politicize this. But now as the dust settles and people are actually starting to look at this, once again, the left has reliably overplayed its hand to the point where outside of a very liberal echo chamber, those independents, those kind of moderates, those people sitting back going, well, do I go with a Tea Party conservative, a Republican? Do I go with a Democrat, a liberal? What they sought for political gain has actually hurt them, because now people can sit back and say, well, that's unfair, that's unreasonable. You mentioned, you called them vultures. I think that's appropriate. Unfortunately, one of the worst vultures in this whole thing is the sheriff of Pima County, Arizona, Sheriff Clarence Dupnick, who is blaming Rush Limbaugh and the Tea Party and conservatives for, quote, irresponsible vitriol. Of course, a Democrat, a liberal, of course, not mentioning any of the hate speech that came out of the ACLU and other groups calling Tea Partiers racist and so forth. So the hypocrisy abounds. But this sheriff, in my opinion, he continues. He's dug his heels in, continues to bring shame upon himself, upon Pima County, upon the sheriff's office. He really should resign. Frankly, he has stepped out of the realm as an objective investigator and has stepped into the realm of politician, has politicized this in a disgraceful manner.
Matt, but that's the way power is taken, and historically that's the way that it's been taken by dictators and those who couldn't get the acquiescence of the people all along, is that you come in and you try to create moral license by expanding, by taking advantage of a bad situation. That was what Rahm Emanuel was talking about when he said, let no crisis go to waste. And what you're going to see here are two things come under attack in order. Go ahead and take them in order. The First Amendment and the Second Amendment.
Mm-hmm.
Those are the two things that are going to come under the greatest attack through this, is the ability
and they already
of free speech and the Second Amendment right.
They already are.
Arms.
Democrats talking about introducing bills that would make it a criminal to use this kind of incendiary rhetoric and so forth. Well, folks, we need to keep our eye on the ball here. Focus and pray for the families of the victims, the families of the fallen, for Congresswoman Giffords. Pray for the state of Arizona and for our nation as we all join together and mourn this horrible tragedy and mourn the loss of these precious lives. To learn how you can become part of Liberty Counsel's ministry, go to lc.org or give us a call, 1-800-671-1776.
You have been listening to Matt Staver of Liberty Counsel. Our hope is to encourage and inspire you to stand up for your faith, family, and freedoms. We can accomplish a lot when we work together. Get informed and get involved today. Sign up for our free monthly newsletter, The Liberator. We will send it out to you free of charge. Stay informed with our Liberty Alert email update. Just click on the website at www.lc.org or call us at 1-800-671-1776. Tune in next time to learn more about your rights right here on Faith and Freedom.